Director, Enablement Advisors. We are joined by Olivia Cooper, Head of Private Wealth and Family Office at Axiom Stone. And we are rejoined by Eric Powell, Chief Security Officer at Bayshore Global. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the forum. Eric, how's it been for you so far?
I'm enjoying this quite a bit. The people that are speaking are just fantastic, and maybe partly because I agree with virtually everything they're saying.
Well, we'll try and get some debate going, a little bit of discourse, if you pardon the pun. And what I thought would be quite nice is if I ask that similar origin story question for Olivia and then Ivor, because we've heard your origin story, and then getting into what on earth they think a family office really means. And I think that's especially relevant for Olivia, because on this call we've got wealth management, we've got family homes, we've got royal court, we've got all sorts. So Olivia, please, could you tell us a bit about yourself and then what on earth a family office is?
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Olivia Cooper. As you've heard, I'm Head of Private Wealth and Family Office at Axiom Stone Solicitors. So I'm a lawyer and I'm based here in Mayfair in London, but my clients are from all over the world. So I operate all over the world. So that's me. My background is law, and before that, economics. So I'm a risk analyst before I became a lawyer, and that's where I've come from. I've come into private wealth, so I deal with ultra high net worth and high net worth individuals, succession planning, structuring for them, and setting up those family offices that you all work for. So I do all the structuring that sets them up, deciding where they should be sited, what structures should be included, what assets are going to be included in there, who's going to be running it, etc., whether it's going to be a virtual family office, traditional single family office, or whether the client will be better off joining a multi-family office. So that's where I come in. So that's what I do. And did you want me to answer the question, what is a family office?
I know it's going to be a bit of a spectrum answer, but yes, please.
Okay, very quick 1 minute question answer. Okay, what is a family office? Well, a family office can be either a multi-family office or it can be a single family office. And like the name suggests, a multi-family office is an investment house really for a number of families to join. Sometimes it was a single family office and other families have joined in and it morphs into a multiple family office. But the traditional form of a family office is the single family office. And as the name suggests, it's set up for the benefit of one family. And this can take the form of a traditional structure whereby you have a building with your name on it, or likewise, or without your name on it, but you employ staff that take over your asset management, your investment portfolios, and take over basically running your lives for you for the family in terms of everything from security, as we've already been talking about, travel plans, PA assistance, whatever, housing, whatever. They take education for their children. The family office takes over the running of the family's life from cradle to grave. It's also most important of all, family offices, especially traditional family offices and single family offices, are multi-generational, and that's the key point. And it's something that an awful lot of people don't understand, especially in wealth management, maybe, or certainly in the field of finance, that where you're dealing with family offices, we are looking at multiple generations. So we're looking at investing for many, many years ahead. So where all the planning is not just for the short term. So for us, 5 to 7 years is short term, but we have plans that go on for 50, even 100 years to generations that we will never live to see, because that's the whole point of a family office. It's succession planning.
Wonderful. No, I like that. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. You see, that I'm glad I asked. Ivor, welcome. Obviously, I know you. There are other people in the audience because we've got a whole new community that may not know your background. Could you tell everyone a bit your origin story and what you understand family offices to be, but obviously not in the definition terms?
Sure, absolutely, Philip. So first of all, great event so far. I'm really enjoying and learning from the other speakers and panelists, and it's great to see some familiar faces and people that I'm not in contact with day to day. Olivia, hi. Eric, good to see you again online. So I've been in I'd say, protecting people or interests at some level or another for close to 30 years. I served in the Israeli Defense Forces for a short time, in the Israeli police for a short time, and then actually went to work for the US government here in Israel for a joint US-Israeli project where we started a covert program for surveillance detection and covert protection of US diplomats and interests. Based off our program, that was used as a model for other embassies and diplomats around the world. And then I moved into the private sector. And I've been in this industry ever since. My experience with family offices actually started around 12 or 13 years ago in Jerusalem with Mr. Eric Powell, when we worked together on a job, and that was actually exposure to the first family office I worked with shortly after that. And that's what I do. I work with family offices. My business, Enablement Advisors, it works with multinational corporations and executive offices as well. So the C-suite's up there. And really what we do, and this goes back to what all the panelists said, and Eric touched on a lot, and that's why I called the business Enablement Advisors, is we enable the clients to do what they need to get done and to live their personal life, as Eric said, and to do what they want without hindrance from either inappropriate or obtrusive security measures, or without hindrance from risk where it can be mitigated. So let me jump onto my sort of understanding or definition of family offices. In the classic sense, and what we're talking about in this conference, a family office is really a business entity which looks after the interests of that family or individual. It's a legal entity that separates what that individual does, their investments, their properties, their security. It separates it one step ahead from them from being personally involved. And it's a team of people, professionals, the best of the best and culturally suitable, that are dedicated to make that particular family's affairs, whether it's business or private, run as it should. So that the client, the principal, the head of the family can do what they need to do, and everything just happens for them, in short. That's the classic sense. That's what we're talking about here. However, in recent years, I've been speaking with family offices, specifically in Africa, and the family offices I've spoken to in Africa have been slightly different. They've been family-run businesses, and that's the family office, right? So they'll have a commercial business, whether it's making socks or building cars, but it's family-owned, and that's considered the family office, is the executive office for that family. So there's definitely different types of family offices that I've been exposed to. But as far as the security realm and what we're all talking about, I think that forms into the classic understanding of where we are now as a business entity owned by the family, there to serve the family's interests and needs and enable them to do whatever they want to do.
I like it. That's a nice additional take on it all, and I didn't know that about the African ones. We just did a West African one, so I will be sure to ask them. And maybe we have a couple of people from Nigeria in the audience. Gospel should be here if you're there. Hi, Gospel. Eric, what about risk management within the family office? What if we take that maxim? One family office. One family office. Does that actually make a family office more secure? Because it may be less connected, it may be less similar. The multi-tenancy problems of maybe a multi-family office are different to a single family office. What do you think, Eric? Is that actually a good thing to be unique?
Well, I think not necessarily, but my experience with single family offices, especially out where I'm at here in California, where all are Gen 1, maybe Gen 2, is often because the family offices formed from a very informal kind of thing. They weren't not plans and policies and protocols initially, I think to a great extent they're even more vulnerable to cyber breaches, to data loss, things like that, poor hiring decisions. When it's a small group or the principals themselves are doing their own hiring, if you will, as in the early days, I think sometimes problems arise because of the types of people that get brought into the family. Whereas after a period of time, maybe it's as Gen 2 begins to take over, if we see that the family office has become more mature, they've begun to hire people to manage very specifically without having to continually talk to the principal about what's happening, then we see that tightening up. And that's certainly been the experiences, I think, of the family office I work for and the kind of associated ones around it. We're seeing that as time goes on, they are getting more secure. But early on, I would not characterize it that way. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's candid. I like it. Olivia, I know why I invited you to join this event, but were you surprised insofar as maybe traditionally general counsel or solicitors or wealth management may not have been engaged enough in risk management, or is that perception completely wrong?
It's an interesting question. I myself have been involved in highlighting risks to my clients since I began in practice, because, for example, geopolitical risk analysis has been something that I've studied from university onwards. So it's always been part of my academic background. It's part of who I am. It's part of where my entry into the legal profession came from. So yes, risk analysis and risk management is still part of my job. So I wasn't surprised to be invited, but certainly among my colleagues in the profession, you might suggest, yes, that risk management. But then again, I mean, I think it's already been said by other panelists, we have risk management has now become part of everybody's jobs. It's not simply just part, you have your risk management team, you have your lawyers team, you have your accountants team. We don't work like that anymore. Everybody's job filters on everybody else's. So we have to know what's going on. And certainly in my terms, for things like geopolitical risk analysis, that's very much part of my job. I have to know what's going on in the world. I have to know how it's going to affect my clients. And I have to be able to advise on, if there's going to be an uprising in a certain country, if we're going to see increased civil unrest around the globe, what effects this is going to have on the economy, what effects this is going to have on global economic structuring. This will all have an impact on my client's work, whether it be a business within a family office or whether it just be investments within a family office. It's going to have an impact. And my clients expect me to know what's going on, and quite rightly, they should know. They should expect me to know what's going on. Unfortunately, it's a bit like the old Russian Navy back in 1904. Although we may be able to predict what's coming up and have an idea of where things are going, the second part of being in part of risk analysis is actually being able to act on that risk analysis. And certainly you can find that clients can be a little adverse to changing policies. If it's always worked before, why do we have to change it? Well, the world is changing and this might be happening and this might be happening, and you give them the risk policy and they say, well, oh yeah, but we'll see what happens. And that's the worst thing you can possibly say, because of course then you're playing catch up rather than having foreseen what was going to happen and be able to plan for it ahead and change your strategy to fit what's coming up. And my analogy was where I mentioned the Russian Navy, because in 1904, of course, the Russian Navy was given intel to say that there was a very big chance of an attack by the Japanese fleet. And okay, the intel was absolutely spot on, because what happens is they get this intel and they didn't react to it. And by 1905, the Russian fleet is at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. So, it's all good to be a risk analysis, but you also have to act on what the information you have. So it's two-part for me. So that's where I come in.
I love the Russo-Japanese war analogy. I also know that the Japanese ships put on armor and the Russians didn't, and there's a whole thing about that, which is kind of funny. Well, not funny, so it's tragic, but
But if you know an attack is coming,
yeah,
you don't wait for it to happen. You take steps in advance to protect against it. That's
I love it.
The whole point. And by the way, I actually did, and I'm not actually blowing my trumpet here, but I did actually, when I was asked back in the beginning of 2019 at a conference, I was asked, should family offices be preparing for? What risks should they be preparing for? And I said global pandemic, because we could see it coming. And it was, I mean, I was thinking more on the Ebola front, which I'm very glad did not take place, because much as we've suffered under COVID, it would have been an awful lot worse than something like Ebola. But even so, we could have actually they should have been putting in place, the risk strategy should have been in place for things such as a global pandemic.
Fantastic. I love the analogies. Ivor, obviously this isn't airborne Ebola, luckily, but what risks have been brought to the forefront for the family office through the pandemic?
Interesting question, Phelim. So I'd say that the primary risk is operational, in that over and above the family potentially being exposed to getting ill, what it's created is a situation where all the support, so the house support, if there's office, the office support, all the people there might themselves get ill, including security, expose the family members to heightened risk of getting ill, and in parallel to that, won't be able to function or get their job done. So if we speak about risk, let's think for a minute a single family office that has legal counsel. Full-time employed, they maybe have 2 people, maybe 1, maybe 3, but definitely not more. If those legal counsel get ill and have to go to hospital or even home in quarantine, who's going to handle any legal affairs? If someone on the security team at the house gets ill, how does that affect the family? Does the whole family need to be quarantined? So I think the risk is more operational. Of course, there's a health risk, right? But washing your hands, keeping distance, and wearing a mask, you limit that. But, excuse me, I think that the risk is more operational and how it can affect things. And that can lead to physical risk if indeed the security team is depleted because they're ill. And then you have to bring in other people that might not know the residents, they might not know the executive. So, and especially if it's a very highly specialized security team, it's very difficult to do that. So I think that's the risk exposure, is from taking things, existing blocks out of the equation. And if you look at what our job is, well, what I think our job is as risk management professionals, our job is very simple. It's to prevent crisis. A crisis, my definition anyway, is any incident that has been mismanaged or not managed at all becomes a crisis. So COVID in itself, the virus, was not a crisis. The mismanagement or the spread of COVID led to the economic and health crisis, right? So COVID's not the crisis, the result is the crisis. So it's our job as security professionals or risk management professionals to prevent crisis. And point being, if we know there's a pandemic, which there is, we should look in the family office space at the critical functions of that family office, whether it's legal, whether it's security, whatever it is. And we should then have those people working in a way that if one of them gets ill, it doesn't infect or require quarantine of anyone else who can do the same job, right? So what we call it in Israel, and I can't think of an English translation, but a capsule. So you have people that work in capsules and their shifts are capsules, so that I know if I'm security, every single shift I'm working with the same people, and I understand the logistics and how terrible it is to make that happen, how difficult. But ideally, then if I get sick, my capsule's sick, but I've still got other people that can carry on working. It doesn't affect the entire team. Because if I'm working on Monday morning with someone and Tuesday afternoon with other people and Wednesday night with other people and I get sick, I've infected the whole detail. I've infected or potentially infected everyone. But if I'm with the same people all the time, then it's only them that get sick. And if I'm legal or CFO or CEO of the family office, I should limit all the time my exposure to other key functions so that if I get ill or suspected of being ill, I don't restrict anyone else at the leadership level of the family office from working. So I don't know if I answered your question, if I just went on a tangent, but that's my point.
No, I like it. It's a good angle to look at. We, in fairness, to make this nice and interactive, we have a nice question from Gregory Schneider. He says, with more and more people under the uncertain financial risk, do you fear any family offices high net worth will face more targeted threats from growing population who find themselves broken out of work? I suppose this is the usual. Everyone went to their hideouts in New Zealand and now everyone's angry or whatever. I don't know. Eric, can I give you that one? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the answer is kind of yes and no. Just depends on where the family offices find themselves. One of the things that we look at out here are the principals who live in the urban centers in, say, San Francisco or a place like this. That's where the looting is typically going to take place. Something like this, it's a high target rich environment for stuff they might be. Other principals live in places that not necessarily remote, but just are off the beaten path, and it doesn't make much sense for somebody to travel that far to break into somebody's house when they could grab a bunch of sneakers downtown a little bit easier. So it kind of is a location and personality driven I think answer ultimately. So it's yes and no.
Trigger one. Ivor, did you want to chime in with that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with Eric. And to answer Greg's question from a different angle, Greg, hey, I hope you're doing well, man. But to answer Greg's question, if the question is, do I think that the threat of a targeted attack on a family office member or ultra high net worth individual might be increased because of the financial crisis? My answer is, it depends. If that person had a gripe with the principal, with the potential target before the financial crisis may be the tipping point. And often in that case, there's already protective intel on these people, etc. If the person had no interaction, the chances of them specifically targeting that individual as a result of the economic crisis, I think it's there, but I don't think it's terribly elevated.
Okay, I like it. Olivia, please let's hear your angle on this.
Well, in terms of the effects of the current economic crisis, it's something I have been advising clients on, because we're looking at the long-term threat, not just the sort of breaking into their house to steal some sneakers. We're looking at the threat to reputation, but also the ongoing polarization. Certainly now we're seeing groups of people saying, tax the rich, and it's very much the family offices are at the forefront of the attack, if you like, because they're seen as harboring wealth for very wealthy people, and they're seen almost as tax evasion or tax avoidance tools. So yes, we are very concerned at the moment with that risk to our clients from this growing economic uncertainty. And there is a growing number of people who are very concerned about their job security, about how they're going to feed their families, how they're going to get to the end of the week for many of these people. And that's why even we're taking long-term strategies. So we are making sure that our clients are seen, not just seen, but are actually doing things to try and help with investment into projects where they are actually helping with the economic situation. So not just green tick or green wash, but they're actually investing in projects that will create jobs, and are actually being shown to be investing in these projects that create jobs, so are creating economic security for people at all levels. That's very important. It's also because this attack will only grow in stature, if you like, as the economic fallout from COVID really takes hold of us. We've already seen the beginnings of it, and we need to act now to sort of protect our clients from this deluge of negativity against people who have any sort of wealth. And that's why we are moving very quickly to put in place positive steps within our structures to make sure that we actually help our clients to have a positive image among people. Because if they're seen to actually be investing in projects which are creating jobs, which are creating helpful atmospheres to create jobs, this is what people want to see. It's no good just, I know we were talking previously about climate change, but climate change is rapidly becoming overexposed and is being seen more and more as a middle class or upper class yuppie concern. Because if you haven't got a job and you can't feed your children and you can't send them to school, then your concern, those are going to be your primary concerns, not saving the planet. I'm not saying that climate change isn't important, but we have to recognize where civil unrest can start from, and this is one of the places it will start from. So we are advising our clients to be more involved and making sure when we look at their investments that we actually have proper social impact, a positive social impact in our investment structures, because that is going to help stem the tide of this anger against the so-called wealthy people.
That's excellent. And I think that's a perspective we absolutely would not have if we did a physical security only event on this topic. I'd be interested, Olivia. You must go to lots of wealth management conferences and the family office network and all of that. Is there something that they talk about there?
Is risk something? Yes, risk. People are always worried. The atmosphere of family offices is quite diverse, because on one hand, you see, this is where it comes back to what is a family office. On one hand, you have family offices that are very pyramidical. So you have a principal and everything goes from what the principal says. Everything emanates out from that. Others, which you see more in the US, certainly the newer, what we call the new money family offices, where you have entrepreneurs, they're far more lateral. So more family members are involved in decision making at a higher level. So it depends. Sometimes you've got, and as Ivor mentioned, you get where, and it's not just Africa, by the way, we've got a lot of Eastern European clients who have family offices that have morphed from having set up a family business, especially, for example, in the Czech Republic, very, very popular. The family office morphs out from having a family business. So that's where it comes from. So yes, at family office conferences, they do discuss risk. It's becoming a greater part of actually the whole strategy, because before everything was very fragmented. So you had your legal advice, you had your accountant, you had your risk management strategy. Now risk management is actually filtering into all of our strategies, whether we're being lawyers, accountants, whatever. We have to take care of the risk management within our field. And I think certainly families are more and more aware of the various attacks that they could come under, and they want to plan in advance to make sure that they can, we can't foresee everything. We don't have a crystal ball, we can't foresee everything. But certainly one of the things I learned, and anybody who's been in the military will certainly know this phrase, time spent on reconnaissance is never wasted. So we do an awful lot of research. We see what's going on. We dig right down. We don't just Google. We don't use Google. We don't just believe what's written in the newspapers. We do an awful lot of research. And a lot of family offices now are seeing the benefits of investing in researchers to make sure that risk analysis, and especially geopolitical risk analysis, is incorporated into their entire strategy, because it is crucial.
Perfect. I love it. And in fact, so do people in the audience, because we got some nice comments in the Discord channel. Damien said lovely, outstanding points about COVID and so on. We had a nice comment from Michael about transport. We've got Greg, who loves all the great answers. Carl, he's made many points, agreeing with you, Olivia, on many of those things. And Neil is reflecting, I think, on the image and things. It says Olivia just spoke military wisdom, excellent recon rules from Damien. So So this is really good. I mean, there's so many other angles we could go down. We've got a half-an-hour panel. We're at the end of it, and I would have, said what's the difference between family office and corporate security, but I think we'll get into that. And I think, Eric, you did cover some of that, of course, earlier. So I mean, as a tour de force around this, I think this has been a great panel. What do you think, Ivor? Have you enjoyed it?
I always enjoy the panels on your conferences, Phelim, but I did enjoy it, and hearing Olivia's insights and Eric's insights. And I'm a firm believer that the more information we have to work with, the more tools we'll have to deal with issues and prevent crises. So I'm always happy to be on panels. I'm always happy to listen to panels. And I think this is great. I think it's very educational for me and educational for the audience. So well done on pulling this together, Phelim.
Well, no, well done on
well done.
you for joining. Wonderful. So, well, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ivor. Thank you, Olivia, for being such great panelists and joining us. So many nice comments in the audience, and let's give them a virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And eventually I will find that fantastic clap button. There is a virtual clap button somewhere, but yeah, nice comments in the audience. Wow, it's all coming through. We got Simeon, he says, so true, time spent in recon is never wasted. Keith says, excellent panel. Gerard says, thanks so much. Carl says, well done. Damien is clapping. Chris is saying, thank you, panelists. Ami is saying, great panel. Christian's saying, good stuff. Radislav saying, thank you, great panel. And I've got loads of nice beeps. Brandon is saying, great job to all. And Miranda, I think, was commenting as well. So